Farmers today are facing rising costs, volatile markets, and extreme weather. The A Better Way to Farm podcast digs into strategies to help you take control of farm inputs and maximize profit so your farm can thrive for generations. Remember to take advantage of our free resources at abetterwaytofarm.com. Now, from America's Heartland, here's your host.
Welcome, everybody, to the A Better Way to Farm podcast. I'm your host today, Andrew Moore, and we're going to be joined today by a great farmer from the state of Minnesota who has been working with our team now for a number of years. And we look forward to just hearing from him and gleaning some words of wisdom that he has for us and his farming operation and all the things that we've been able to accomplish as we have worked together. And so I'm very pleased to introduce to the call my good friend, Andrew. How are you today?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing good today. Doing good. So tell us a little bit about your story. You know, where do you farm? What do you guys grow? And then how did you wind up working with A Better Way to Farm?
All right. Farm in southern Minnesota. We have a cow-calf herd. We grow corn, soybeans, and also canning crops for our local canning plant. So that looks like peas, lima beans, sweet corn. We also obviously have some hay ground in for our cattle herd and been doing some cover crops. Been working with A Better Way to Farm now we're coming into the fourth season. Basically just reached out because I got tired of not understanding why we were doing the things we were doing in our operation. And that's kind of where it all started.
Absolutely. So you followed us on social media, is that right?
Yep.
Okay. And so something caught your eye. Tell us a little bit about the way you farmed before working with us, and how did we help shift your thinking a little bit?
I wouldn't say we were 100% co-op, but we were a dry spread alongside manure, and we had an in-furrow program, but we didn't really have any knowledge of why we were doing what we were doing. You know, so there wasn't much for organization that way or any kind of, it was just kind of, we would call up, ask the co-op what we should do on these fields for this year. And depending on if we had manure or not, we would kind of adjust, mostly just based on feel, it felt like, of what we were supposed to do. But we didn't really have a solid plan in place.
Okay. And so what was one of the first steps you took working with us to help give you the knowledge to get that plan in place?
Came to one of the fundamentals of agronomies in, I think it was Bloomington or Burnsville, Minnesota.
Very good. And so what was something that you took away from there that you implemented in your operation?
So right away, we went back and looked at, I got a hold of our soil test, which I was able to get a hold of, and started looking at the numbers based off of kind of what I had learned at that 2-day conference, and started looking at kind of what we were doing as far as pH management. That was the first step for us, was the lime that we were applying. We had never been told anything about different ratios of base saturations and calcium and magnesium and that sort of thing. And so we started looking at that, and what we were doing for pH management was hurting us on the back end historically. So we changed up that. And that was kind of the first step, is our pH management.
Excellent. So you come to this meeting. Do you farm like just you and your wife, or is it a family operation with multi-generations?
Yeah, myself and my dad and my uncle.
Okay. So what was it like for you who reached out to us and came to our meeting? You know, talk to us about what that was like, talking to your dad and your uncle about making some changes. Did that go well for you?
It went fairly well. I wasn't able to do everything I wanted to do right away, but they kind of gave me the free rein to try a small portion of the farm right away and make some changes, you know, that I thought would be beneficial. And so then we've seen very good results the first year with what we did. We changed up our in-furrow program. I did a little bit of foliar work, and then we changed up some of our pH management strategies. So then I kind of got able to, after year one, then we soil tested everything, ran it through our recommendation system that we got, and with Better Way to Farm. And so that was the big turning point after that, was where once we were able to really kind of see some of the results move forward.
Excellent. So you mentioned you've been working with us now for 4 years. So, 5 years ago, you were 100% manure and dry fertilizer operation. I'm working mainly with the co-op, not really a clear plan. And then talk to us about what you're doing now. And, you're doing full liquid, I assume, in furrow, foliar feeding, and making those adjustments. Can you just kind of run through like your program and what you do now so our growers, our listeners have an idea of, okay, what is this guy really doing now to see some good success?
Yeah, so now the soil testing is huge. We start there, and then our program that we've built off the soil tests is we still rely on manure. That's still part of our program, but we've been able to kind of balance everything out and really push what we're doing separate from the manure, the dollars we're spending, into really dialing in our in-furrow program. We've added, so I got in-furrow with a splitter on the planter, and then we've added 2x2 as well. That's allowed us to address some of the fields. We pull stalks off. We don't sell them, but we spread them back on, but doesn't always work out. They go on the same place. So being able to add a little extra potassium and boron into that 2x2, and then coming back in, I got a drone. So I do all my foliar feeding with the drone instead of the sprayer. And so putting that to work on the beans has been big for us. Corn as well. I do most of my corn foliar work late season with the fungicide pass. But the beans, I've really been able to increase a lot with foliar feeding in season. Usually I make 2 foliar passes in season on the beans. On a good year, maybe even I'll make a third one just because I'm feeling froggy, I guess.
Absolutely. Okay, very fun. Excellent. And then talk to us about what you've seen on the farm in the last 4 years as far as a transformation. Have you seen cost savings? Have you seen increased yield? Why are you doing what you're doing?
I would say the biggest thing we've seen is we've increased our yields. So like the beans, we're up, I figured roughly 17 bushel from 4 years ago, and corn we're up around 40, 42 bushel across the board.
Holy smokes. Wow.
And we spend about the same dollars, but I'm 100% happy with the results, spending the same dollars and getting that kind of increases.
Right.
And also feeling like at the end of the day, when I make the decision and spend the money, I know why I'm spending the money where I am. And for me, that's huge, because before it was like they come, they put a plan in front of you, you write the check and hope for the best. Where now it's like I'm making conscious decisions for our operation.
Absolutely. You're making conscious decisions. And from my perspective, you're also implementing a system that while you're spending about dollar for dollar, and for our listeners, our system is very, very fluent based on your needs, based on your soil and tissue tests, right?
Definitely.
So that's the deal. Some of our listeners, if you've been overspreading on dry fertilizer and overspending, then we can really, really dial that back. And it's really based on a field by field basis. Everyone wants to know, how much does your program cost? And I said, well, we have to look at your soil test. We have to do what you need. That's what we do. But I'll say this also, on our farm, Andrew, I'm curious what you think of this. But yeah, we can spend about the same in some cases on some fields as like a normal dry spread program. But yes, the increased yield, obviously that's a no-brainer. But also I think the long-term effects of the soil health, right? I know some of our listeners are very soil health conscious. What are some things you see with our system about that and in that arena and the long-term soil health ramifications, in your opinion?
So instantly what I noticed in the first couple years when we were doing not necessarily the entire farm, the first year I got kind of free rein on a small amount. The second year, when we went back over those acres, because we started initially with corn, we kind of, went into corn the first year. The second year that went into beans, and our bean yields on that ground that I'd pushed through our system the first year went nuts compared to what they were before. And that's kind of what I'm noticing now. It's a build to where everywhere where I'm kind of advanced managing through this system, the following crops are benefiting greatly from it. And I think too, like our cover crops, we do quite a bit of cover cropping. Our county does some programs for that, so it pays us to do it. But on the backside of that, I'm noticing with this system, it really works really well. We're getting very good benefits from year to year having this system in place on these fields that we've had it on the longest are our best fields. And so that's nice to see.
Absolutely. So I don't want to glaze over the fact, and we have such a neat opportunity talking to you, in that you also deal with what I would consider to be some specialty crops. Obviously most of our listeners, definitely corn, soybeans, some wheat, alfalfa is going to be kind of some of our main crops that a lot of our listeners deal with. But you have such a unique thing to share in the specialty crops world, as I call it, and with your canned crops. So if you don't mind, just dig into that a little bit. Tell us again exactly what those crops are that you're growing. How do you grow them? And then what are some opportunities for this system? If any of our listeners do deal with those crops, what do we have to offer?
Definitely. So obviously this isn't the first thing we started with on the canning crops, but once I learned how to foliar feed and did all this stuff through the system and realized through our soil testing platform, it'll actually spit out recommendations as well for these canning crops like the edible beans, the sweet corn, peas. It'll give us recommendations for that. So for the peas, usually I'll run one pass of either our bedding pack or a light load of turkey litter down as a base. And then right at flowering, we tissue test and foliar feed right by the recommendation. And that has been a very profitable pass for us. We've spent on the last couple years, the peas, we've spent 25, 30 bucks on that pass and have far exceeded any yield results we've ever had in the past. So that's been a big one. The lima beans, they're a little more sensitive, so we got to be careful, but it gives us a recommendation. We go out and apply. Sugar is a big one for them, and it's been awesome to have that. On the sweet corn side, just being able to tailor in, tailor in the micronutrients, the program itself, to dial in for the field to those crops and not just say, well, this is what everybody else runs for sweet corn, so we're going to dry spread that on and hope for the best. This has been able to really dial it in and really, we're always far above the averages that the canning crop puts out as far as their tonnages. So it's been really good that way.
Excellent. Very fun. Very fun. And so obviously you get paid, obviously you yield more on those crops, so you get paid more. Is there, and again, I'm just coming at this from total ignorance because I don't know anything about these crops. Obviously, there's a feel-good aspect to this, but is there any kind of measurement for just the quality of what you're putting out? Is there any kind of a premium for that?
So they do give a premium. For me, I haven't been able to measure the difference yet between our before or after. Everything they do is based on weight, and then they do give a premium as well for some quality stuff, but that's so related to when they come to harvest your particular field. So in my opinion, there's a big luck factor on if they pull into your field at the right time for when your crop is at the optimum level for the quality side. But I have no doubt that what we're doing is making a difference that way, just because of, even on the tonnage, well, we get paid by tons. So if we can push out a bunch more tonnage, then the quality isn't such a big deal because you're so reliant on them for timing on the quality anyways, that really the only number I focus on is tonnage.
Great. Good to know. Awesome. Yeah, very, very fun. So Andrew, we've got some listeners here. We're kind of at the tail end of our 2-day Fundamentals of Agronomy training season. I think we've got 2 programs left, but I'm sure there's a lot of growers listening that was kind of in your boat 5 years ago where you say, you know what, we need to do something different. We just do not know how to make the right decisions on our farm, and we don't know how to manage our number one expense. And a lot of operations, the number one input expense, at least, is usually fertility, and that depends on the crop. But that's kind of our bread and butter. So what's your advice to that person that's sitting here and wondering if they need to come to this 2-day agronomy training And if they need to reach out to us, what is your best advice to them here and now?
Yeah, definitely. That's a major, jumping point, to be able to get to that. It's the start of everything, as far as changing your mindset, knowing what you need to be looking for, knowing what things you can implement, and then talking to a whole bunch of people or being around a bunch of like-minded individuals that, a lot of them there, maybe, there's returning people that come to them as well. So you can sit and talk with them at the meals or during the training and get that firsthand experience from people that have implemented it to tell you, hey, it's not that difficult. We've did it. This is how we set up our planner. This is how we foliar feed. So really takes kind of the fear of the unknown out of it when you come to that training.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Andrew, thank you so much for your time today. And hopefully this will serve as a mark for a lot of people who listen to this episode and they made a decision based on this. And so I think that this is going to be very helpful for a lot of our growers. So I want to thank you for your time today. And I just want to invite all of our listeners to reach out to us at A Better Way to Farm. If you have any questions about anything we talked about, we would love to chat with you. So with that, we hope everyone is having a better day.